I'm a 34-year-old guy, and I live a quiet, child-free life. I've got a stable job, a decent apartment, and no interest in parenting. I like my space, my routine, and my peace. My sister, Lisa 38F, is the complete opposite. She's the perfect mom of the family, always bragging about how well she's raising her three kids, 12M, 10F, and 7M, how she manages everything flawlessly, and how she has everything under control. That's why I was completely blindsided when I got a text from her out of nowhere. Lisa, hey, just a heads up. The kids will be staying with you for a while. I'll bring them over on Friday. Get the guest rooms ready. No request, no question, just a decision she had already made without me. I had to read the message twice just to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. I immediately texted back, asking what was going on. Was this some kind of emergency? Did she need help for a day or two? Instead of answering my questions, she just hit me with, "It's temporary. Don't stress, you'll be fine. They love their uncle my name." At this point, I was already annoyed. I don't have guest rooms. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment. One room is my bedroom, and the other is my office. I also don't have kids, and I definitely didn't sign up to be a babysitter. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. A few minutes later, I got another text. "Lisa, I need this. Okay? Just step up for family. It's not forever." That set off alarms. Not forever could mean anything. A weekend? A month? A year? I texted back asking exactly how long she meant, but she ignored that question completely. Instead, she hit me with, "BTW, can you stock up on groceries? I'll pay you back later." Now, Lisa is the kind of person who always acts like she has everything together, but she also has a habit of dumping responsibilities on other people when things get tough. We were never super close growing up, mostly because she's always been a bit controlling and dismissive. If something didn't go her way, she'd manipulate the situation until she got what she wanted. Still, this was next level. I reached out to our parents, assuming they knew something. My mom's response? "Lisa's been really overwhelmed. Just help her out for a while." I asked why they couldn't take the kids, and she sighed. "We can't handle 3 kids full-time, but we'll pitch in if you need help. Besides, you're great with kids." I have no idea where she got that impression. I started reaching out to other family members, hoping someone else could step in. Nope. Instead, I started getting guilt-tripping texts from an aunt, an uncle, and even a cousin I barely talked to, all telling me that I needed to be there for Lisa because the kids need stability. Lisa still hadn't told me what was going on. At this point, all I knew was that she had made up her mind and expected me to fall in line. That's when I found out about Dan. Dan is Lisa's husband, or at least he was. I hadn't heard much about him recently, so I finally asked my mom what was going on there. Turns out, Dan had taken a business opportunity overseas and had been gone for a while. No one knew when he was coming back, or if he was coming back at all. That explained a lot. Lisa had always been the kind of person who relied on her husband to keep things running smoothly. If Dan was out of the picture, she was probably struggling. But that still didn't explain why she thought she could dump her kids on me without even asking. I texted Lisa one more time, making it clear that I wasn't comfortable with this, and that I would have appreciated a real conversation before she made this decision for me. Her response? "I don't have time for drama. Just do this for me." I couldn't believe it. She wasn't even pretending to care about my opinion. She had already decided that this was happening, and in her mind, there was nothing I could do about it. Then just when I thought this situation couldn't get more ridiculous, she dropped one last message. "I might bring them by Thursday instead, actually. Be ready." Thursday, a day earlier than she originally said. I sat there staring at my phone, realizing I had no plan. I had no idea how to take care of 3 kids. I didn't know their schedules, their routines, or even what they ate. I had never changed a diaper, packed a school lunch, or helped with homework. And Lisa, she clearly didn't care. She was dropping this responsibility on me, and she had no intention of taking no for an answer. I was in the middle of a work call when my doorbell rang. It wasn't supposed to be today. Lisa said Friday, but when I opened the door, there they were, 3 kids, duffel bags at their feet, and Lisa standing behind them, sunglasses on, car still running. She barely even looked at me. Just handed over a piece of paper with a few notes scrawled on it, mumbled something about them being excited, and then, before I could say anything, she was back in her car. No explanations, no instructions, no nothing. The door slammed, the engine revved, and she was gone. I stood there for a second, just staring at the kids. The youngest one, 7M, was clutching a stuffed dinosaur. The 10-year-old, a girl, was already pulling out a tablet. The 12-year-old looked at me like he was waiting for some grand welcome. "All right, come in, I guess." They filed inside, dragging their bags behind them. I took one look at what Lisa packed and knew immediately that this was going to be a disaster. Barely any clothes, no school supplies, and definitely not enough food. It was like she packed for a weekend trip, not an indefinite stay. I checked my phone, no new messages, no explanations, just the last text she sent earlier. "You'll do great. Love ya." I tried calling, straight to voicemail. The kids meanwhile made themselves at home. Within 10 minutes my living room looked like a tornado hit it. Backpacks dumped on the floor, shoes kicked off in random directions, crumbs already forming a new ecosystem on my couch. I caught the 7-year-old smearing peanut butter on a cushion. Hey, don't. Why? Why would you do that? He just blinked at me, completely unfazed. It was already clear they had no idea how long they were staying. The 10-year-old asked if I had a movie night planned. The 12-year-old wanted to know if he could use my gaming setup. The 7-year-old announced he was hungry. All right, food. That was something I could handle. I ordered a couple of pizzas, thinking that was an easy win. Wrong. The 10-year-old saw the pizza and immediately looked horrified. Mom says I can't have gluten. I stared at her. Since when? She shrugged. I dunno. Always. I checked my phone again. No response from Lisa. Of course, I had no gluten-free anything in my apartment. I offered her some fruit, but she pouted and said she didn't want fruit. The 7-year-old, meanwhile, had somehow gotten his hands on a bottle of soda and was now bouncing on my couch like it was a trampoline. This was already spiraling. Bedtime wasn't any better. Around 9 p.m., I told them it was time to wind down. That was apparently the funniest thing they'd ever heard. The 7-year-old refused to sleep without Lisa's special bedtime routine. I asked what that was. He said it was a secret. I asked what she normally did. He shrugged and said, lots of things. Super helpful. The 10-year-old refused to sleep because the 7-year-old was being loud. The 12-year-old insisted he didn't need a bedtime at all. I ended up bribing them with extra screen time for the next day just to get them to stay in bed. By the time the apartment was quiet, it was nearly midnight. I finally sat down, exhausted, thinking I had survived the worst of it. Then I remembered, school. I grabbed their backpacks, looking for schedules or any kind of instructions. What I found instead were half-eaten snacks, crumpled worksheets, and a mess of papers that told me absolutely nothing about what time they had to be there or how they even got there. Bus? Drop-off? Walk? No clue. I texted Lisa again. No answer. Morning came way too fast. I woke up to loud arguing in the living room. The 12-year-old was mad at the 10-year-old for taking his charger. The 7-year-old was still in pajamas, watching cartoons like we weren't already late. I scrambled to throw together something for breakfast. I had eggs, toast, cereal. I don't eat eggs. I don't like that kind of cereal. My toast has too much butter. By the time I got them all dressed and out the door, I was already late for work. I still didn't know how they normally got to school, so I had to drive them. Of course, traffic was terrible. The 7-year-old complained that he felt carsick the entire ride. At drop-off, I expected at least one of the teachers to ask where Lisa was. No one did. I asked one of the staff members if they had a schedule for the kids. She gave me a look like I should already know. It's in the parent portal. Lisa never gave me access to that. I sat in the car for a minute before heading to work, already knowing I was in trouble. My boss was understanding, but only to a point. You need to figure this out, he said. I didn't have an answer for him. Later that afternoon, I went grocery shopping. Lisa hadn't sent any money, so I covered it. Added some school supplies too, since their backpacks were a mess. I texted Lisa again, asking if she planned on coming back soon. Her response? You're doing great. I believe in you. That was it. Jake asked me that night when Lisa was coming back. I had no answer for him. At this point, it was obvious. Lisa never intended to give me a choice. She had no plan, no timeline, nothing. She dumped them on me and disappeared, and I had no idea what to do next. The chaos didn't slow down after the first night. If anything, it got worse. The next morning, while trying to get the kids out the door on time, my phone rang. It was the 10-year-old school. The secretary asked why Lisa hadn't responded to multiple emails about missing homework. Apparently, the 10-year-old hadn't turned in a single assignment for the past 2 weeks. That was news to me. I told the school Lisa wasn't available and asked for access to whatever parent portal they used. They emailed me a login link, and when I finally got in, I saw the real disaster. All 3 kids were behind in assignments. The 7-year-old was flagged for missing multiple reading logs. The 10-year-old had failing grades in 2 subjects. The 12-year-old, barely passing and had multiple unexcused absences. Lisa, the same Lisa who constantly bragged about her amazing parenting, had clearly checked out long before dumping them on me. Meanwhile, the kids weren't exactly helping the situation. The 12-year-old spent half the morning on his phone instead of getting ready. When I asked if he had brushed his teeth, he swore he did. The toothbrush was dry. The 7-year-old was found in the hallway drawing on the walls with a marker. The 10-year-old had a full meltdown over math homework, screaming that she hated fractions and that mom always helps me. Lisa still wasn't answering her phone. Hours later, right before lunch, I got a notification. Not a text from Lisa. No, it was an Instagram update. Lisa had posted a selfie from what looked like a resort. She was by a pool, sunglasses on, holding some colorful drink with an umbrella in it. The caption, much needed relaxation. I stared at it for a solid minute. She wasn't overwhelmed. She wasn't figuring things out. She was on vacation. That's when my work situation blew up. I had been struggling to keep up already, and my boss finally pulled me aside for a meeting. He asked if everything was okay because I had been missing deadlines and showing up late. I told him I was dealing with an unexpected family issue, but he made it clear I needed to get things under control fast. After work, I called my mom. She wasn't helpful. Her response? That's just how kids are. You'll adjust. Adjust to being a full-time parent overnight because Lisa decided to take off. I checked my bank account later that night. In less than a week, I had already spent over $500. Groceries, school supplies, clothes, random expenses that kept popping up. Lisa still hadn't sent a single cent. That's when the 12-year-old let something slip. We were sitting in the living room and he casually mentioned that Lisa had been cutting back on groceries, avoiding bills, and making vague comments about fixing things for months. Said she was constantly arguing with someone over the phone. Then I asked about Dan. No one had heard from him. The kids said they hadn't even FaceTimed with him in weeks. That night, I checked her bank transactions again. Instead of making payments for the kids, she had spent money on expensive flights, high-end restaurants, and a hotel under a different name. Lisa wasn't struggling. She had taken off and was living like she had no obligations at all. Disconnected. I searched for him online, checked social media. His Facebook had no new posts, but his Instagram. He had been very active. He was in Thailand, posting pictures of street food, markets, and what looked like a brand new apartment. He wasn't coming back. The 12-year-old saw over my shoulder. "Dad just left us, didn't he?" I didn't know what to say. At this point, the apartment was falling apart. The laundry was never ending. The sink was full of dishes. The kids kept tracking in dirt from outside. Every day, I barely had time to sit down before another problem popped up. And then, one night, the 7-year-old started crying. He kept whispering, "I want mom." I didn't know how to comfort him. What was I supposed to say? "She's on a beach somewhere pretending you don't exist?" I had no answers. So I made a desperate move. I called Lisa's job. Her manager picked up. When I asked if Lisa had been working lately, the answer hit me like a truck. She hadn't shown up in over a week. No calls, no emails, nothing. That's when everything clicked. Lisa didn't just need a break. She wasn't overwhelmed. She abandoned her kids, and I was stuck holding everything together. I couldn't do this alone. Something had to change. Fast. The kids were finally asleep, and I was sitting in the dim light of my living room, scrolling through Lisa's social media. I had checked earlier, but this time, I went deeper. Everything she had posted in the last few weeks felt off. They weren't real-time updates. They were scheduled posts, pictures from months ago, random inspirational quotes, old selfies. Nothing recent. I checked her comments, looking for anything that might give me a clue. There was nothing. No check-ins, no new replies, just generic captions. I opened the family group chat and dropped a message. "Has anyone actually talked to Lisa recently?" The replies trickled in slowly. "She's probably just busy. Didn't she say she was figuring things out? I'm sure she's fine. She's always been independent." Not a single person knew where she was. Then a private message popped up from one of my aunts. She told me she needed to figure some things out. Said she was dealing with a situation. Didn't say what. That wasn't helpful. That could mean anything. I pulled up her bank account, the one she still had connected to school payments. I had been checking to see if she was even covering lunch for the kids. She wasn't. Not only were their school meal fees overdue, but payments for extracurricular activities had been missed for months. She had been struggling financially for a while. The kids had noticed the shift too. The 12-year-old had gotten moodier, spending more time in his room, barely talking. The 10-year-old had started crying over little things, spilling a drink, not being able to find her socks, homework frustration. And the 7-year-old, he was barely eating. Anytime I tried to get him to eat something new, he'd push it away. Mom wouldn't make me eat that. Work wasn't going any better. I was behind on deadlines, missing calls, barely keeping up. My boss had noticed. I got pulled aside and told I needed to get things sorted out. Meanwhile, Lisa was still ignoring my calls. I tried her number again, straight to voicemail. Then, I went back to Dan's profile. He had posted again, another picture of himself in Thailand, posing in front of some street market. His caption, "New chapter, new life, no regrets." No mention of his kids, no mention of Lisa. The 12-year-old had walked into the room while I was still looking at the screen. He glanced at my phone. "Dad just left us, didn't he?" I didn't have an answer. Then another email hit my inbox. A parent-teacher meeting. Lisa had been scheduled to meet with the 10-year-old's teachers about her school performance. Now it was on me. I was running out of options. Lisa wasn't answering. No one in the family had real information. I needed to find her myself. I considered driving to her house, knocking on the door, but I didn't have a key, and I wasn't about to break in. Instead, I went to the next best source, her neighbors. I made a quick stop at her place the next evening and knocked on the door of the woman who lived next to her. "Oh, Lisa," she said. "Yeah, she left with 2 suitcases last week. Didn't say where she was going." That confirmed it. Lisa had packed up and disappeared. The kids had no idea. That night, the 12-year-old sat down at the kitchen table, arms crossed, staring at me. Did Mom abandon us? The question hung in the air. I couldn't lie. I couldn't tell him the truth. I didn't have an answer. I started looking into legal options. Could I refuse to take care of them? Could I make Lisa come back? Was there a way to force her to take responsibility? Calling CPS felt extreme, but I wasn't a parent. I had no idea what I was doing. But one thing was clear. Lisa wasn't coming back anytime soon, and I was no longer just babysitting. I might actually be raising these kids. The parent-teacher meeting was at 10 a.m. I had to leave work early, and my boss was already annoyed. When I got to the school, the front desk lady gave me a weird look when I introduced myself instead of Lisa. "Oh, you're not the mother?" "No, I'm their uncle." The teacher shook my hand and sat me down. She wasted no time getting to the point. The 10-year-old had been struggling for months, missing assignments, incomplete work, zero participation. The teacher said she had reached out to Lisa several times, but Lisa always brushed it off. She told us she was handling it at home, except she wasn't. The teacher pulled out a stack of papers, unfinished assignments, half-written math problems, missing signatures on permission slips. Lisa had been ignoring everything. On my way out of the school, I made a stop at Lisa's job. If she had taken some kind of official leave, maybe her employer had details. The receptionist recognized her name but gave me an odd look. Lisa took a leave of absence. For how long? She hesitated. She didn't say. Lisa hadn't just stepped away for a few days. She had completely disappeared. That afternoon, I got a text from a cousin. "Lisa's probably just going through something. Be patient. Be patient." I had 3 kids in my house who didn't know when their mom was coming back. I needed real answers. I called a lawyer. I needed to know my options. If Lisa had left them with me willingly, could I send them somewhere else? Could I legally force Lisa to take responsibility? The lawyer listened to the situation and gave me the bad news. Since Lisa hadn't technically abandoned them in a legal sense, meaning she had left them in the care of a capable adult, CPS might not act immediately. If I wanted a real solution, I had to either apply for legal guardianship or push for a court intervention. Neither option was quick. I was about to lose hope when my phone rang. "Lisa," I answered. She was completely casual, like nothing had happened. She said she just needed space and that I was overreacting. She wasn't abandoning the kids, just taking time for herself. I snapped. She had dumped 3 kids on me with zero warning, zero plan, and zero end date. My job was on the line. My savings were draining. I had been scrambling for a week while she was posting vacation selfies. Lisa got defensive. She started rambling, blaming stress, saying she just needed space and that I should be more understanding. She sounded jittery, like she knew she was in trouble. I asked where she was. She hesitated. Then she blurted out that she was figuring things out, but her voice wavered. I asked when she was coming back. She didn't have an answer. Her story was falling apart. First, she was overwhelmed. Then she needed a break. Then she was just out of money. Now she had a new life, and the kids didn't fit into it anymore. Then I demanded she at least send money for her kids. She went silent for a moment before admitting she was broke. She had used up her savings and was figuring things out. That's when the 12-year-old walked into the room. He heard everything. "Mom, are you even coming back?" Silence. Then Lisa switched gears. She started guilt-tripping. She said she was trying her best, and that I was making things harder by piling pressure on her. I cut her off. "Either you come back within a week, or I'll take legal action to get the kids placed somewhere else." She laughed. "You wouldn't do that to family." Then she hung up. I stared at my phone. She wasn't taking me seriously. She thought I'd just deal with it. That's when I realized Lisa wasn't coming back. Not unless I forced her to. The 12-year-old sat at the kitchen table, arms crossed, staring at me. His voice was flat. "Mom's not coming back, is she?" I had no answer. Lisa had completely stopped responding after our last conversation. Calls went straight to voicemail. Texts were left unread. It was like she had vanished off the face of the earth. Meanwhile, the kids were starting to settle in too much. The younger ones followed me around, clinging to me like I was their new full-time guardian. The 7-year-old started asking me to tuck him in at night. The 10-year-old asked if she could decorate the empty shelves in my apartment with her books. It wasn't temporary anymore. I needed real answers, so I called a social services office to ask about options. They told me if I couldn't care for the kids, a caseworker would have to investigate. That could mean foster care. It could mean forcing Lisa to come back. There wasn't a simple fix. Things got worse at work. I got a second warning from my boss. He pulled me aside, told me I had to sort this out. He wasn't wrong. My focus was gone. Deadlines were slipping. I was either sleep deprived or running out of the office early. My mother was no help. She kept telling me I was overreacting. That Lisa just needed time. I snapped. Lisa hadn't needed time. She had abandoned her kids. She had left me with everything. She wasn't struggling. She was hiding. I tried reaching out to extended family. I called for a meeting, thinking maybe someone else could take the kids. It was useless. Everyone had excuses. "You're doing fine. Just keep them a little longer." A little longer. No one wanted to step up. No one wanted to push Lisa to take responsibility. Then I got an email. It was from Dan's sister. She had seen a social media post where I mentioned struggling with the kids. She wanted to talk. I called her immediately. She didn't hold back. Dan had left Lisa months ago. His business trip wasn't a business trip. It was an escape plan. He had moved to Thailand to start over. He hadn't even spoken to Lisa since he left. Lisa knew. She had been lying to everyone. She wasn't confused. She wasn't overwhelmed. She had known Dan wasn't coming back and had been hoping to figure it out before anyone noticed. I sat there, gripping the phone, as it all clicked into place. I told the 12-year-old the truth. He didn't take it well. He stormed off, slamming his bedroom door so hard a picture fell off the wall. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. "Lisa, I need more time. Just keep doing what you're doing." That was it. I lost it. I called a lawyer. I needed to take legal action, either to take full custody or to get the kids placed elsewhere. Dan's sister had an offer. She was willing to take the two younger kids, but the 12-year-old, he wanted nothing to do with his dad's side of the family. I had a choice to make: fight for them, or force Lisa to take responsibility. Either way, this wasn't ending quietly. Lisa had been gone for weeks now. No sign of coming back. No answers. Just a single text telling me to keep doing what I was doing. I was done waiting. I filed a police report. Lisa was officially reported as a missing person. Within hours, she finally called. She was furious. The police had shown up at her last known address, her apartment, and it humiliated her. She wasn't missing. She insisted. She just needed time. I didn't care. I told her flat out, either she came back for her kids, or I was taking legal action. She said she just needed a little longer. The kids weren't buying it anymore. When Lisa tried to call them, the 12-year-old refused to speak to her. The 10-year-old picked up once and asked, "Why don't you love us anymore?" Lisa hung up. That was the last time she reached out to them. Dan's sister followed through on her offer. She agreed to temporarily take the two younger kids. She said they deserved stability and Dan clearly wasn't going to step up. But the 12-year-old refused to go. "I'd rather stay here than live with Dad's side of the family." That left me stuck. Meanwhile, my job situation was collapsing. My boss pulled me into a meeting and made it clear I either needed to take formal leave or risk termination. This wasn't just a temporary problem anymore. It was affecting my entire life. I started digging. Lisa's bank account still had school charges linked to it, and I checked the most recent transaction. She wasn't struggling. She wasn't sleeping on someone's couch. She was at a resort 3 states away. I confronted her. She dodged. She said she was using what little savings she had left to clear her head. Her excuse fell apart fast. A mutual friend reached out after seeing my post about looking for Lisa. Lisa wasn't struggling. She was seeing a new guy, a wealthy businessman. He thought she was a recent divorcee, rebuilding her life. He had no clue that she had 3 kids she'd abandoned, and she had carefully avoided posting anything online that might expose the truth. That was it. I sent Lisa a final text. "If you don't come back in 48 hours, I'll be filing for full custody." No response. Dan's family pushed forward. Dan's sister started the legal process to take in the younger kids permanently. Then, the 12-year-old hit me with something that broke me. "I don't think Mom ever wanted us." I didn't know what to say. Finally, Lisa snapped. A long, angry text flooded my phone. I was ruining her life. I was turning her kids against her. I was making things harder for her instead of supporting her. I ignored it. I called the lawyer, and I started the custody process, whether Lisa liked it or not. 2 months. That's how long Lisa had been gone. 2 months of silence, of ignoring calls, of pretending her kids didn't exist. And then, out of nowhere, she showed up at my apartment. She was furious. Not because she had left her kids for 2 months. Not because they were struggling. She was mad because I had gone behind her back. Because I had dared to file for custody. I stood in the doorway, blocking her from barging in. The kids were inside. The last thing they needed was to be blindsided by this. But Lisa wasn't here to see them. She demanded that I drop the custody case and give her back her kids. She had no plan, no money, no stability. She just wanted control again. I called out for the 12-year-old, telling him Lisa was here. No answer. He refused to come out of his room. The younger two, they peeked out, saw their mother standing there, and burst into tears. Lisa dropped into full victim mode. She sobbed. Talked about how hard things had been for her, how she had needed time, and how I should have understood. She never once acknowledged how much harder it had been for her kids. I didn't let her dodge the real questions. Why did she leave? Why did she ignore her kids for months? Why did she lie to everyone? She kept saying she had been overwhelmed, that she needed space. That excuse wasn't working anymore. The 12-year-old finally came out of his room. He didn't cry. He didn't scream. He just stared at her. Then, in a voice cold as ice, he told her, "You abandoned us. You don't get to take us back just because you feel like it." Lisa looked shocked, like it had never even occurred to her that her kids would see through her lies. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. Dan. After months of silence, Dan was reaching out. He had heard about the custody case. His sister must have told him. He wasn't calling to take responsibility. He was calling to negotiate. He didn't want full custody, but he was willing to take the younger 2 kids if I kept the oldest. Like they were objects to be split up. Like they were negotiable. Lisa started crying again. At first I thought she was upset about Dan, about the kids. But then she said it. He left me with nothing. The kids weren't buying it anymore. The legal battle officially began that week. Lisa threatened to fight it. She called our parents. They begged me to just work something out so we could avoid a legal fight. I refused. Then the rest of the family found out, and Lisa's reputation started to crumble. At first she tried to downplay it. She told relatives that I had overreacted and overstepped. Then screenshots got shared, screenshots of her ignoring texts from her own kids, screenshots of her partying while claiming to be broke, screenshots of her boyfriend not knowing she even had kids. That's when everything fell apart for Lisa. Her boyfriend dumped her. Turns out he had no clue she had 3 kids. He had been under the impression that she was just a single woman with a messy divorce. When he found out the truth, He left immediately. Lisa tried to negotiate with me one last time. I didn't budge. The only thing that mattered was the kids' stability. The court date was set, and I was preparing for the biggest fight of my life, to protect the kids from the mother who had abandoned them. Court day arrived. Lisa was already there when I walked into the courtroom. She looked nervous. Her usual confidence, the smug attitude, the fake smiles was gone. She wasn't prepared for this. She had no lawyer, no solid defense. But she tried anyway. She stood before the judge and played the loving mother. She said she just needed a break. She said I misunderstood the situation. She claimed she had always planned to come back. Then the judge turned to the 12-year-old. He asked who he wanted to live with. He didn't hesitate. Anyone but mom. Lisa's face fell. Then the doors opened. Dan walked in, with a lawyer. I hadn't expected him to show up at all. The last I heard, he was still in Thailand. But apparently, his sister had pushed him into acting, warning that if he didn't try to claim custody now, he might lose his parental rights permanently. He didn't want responsibility. He wanted control over the narrative. I didn't buy it. Neither did the judge. Lisa sat there, wide-eyed, watching as her entire case unraveled. The judge pulled up her financial records, the unpaid school fees, the sudden bank withdrawals, the fact that she had been staying at a resort while claiming to be broke. It did not look good. Then they looked at my side. The fact that I had taken care of the kids, made sure they went to school, fed them, kept them safe. The court noted my stability, my job, my home. Lisa started crying. She sobbed, wiping at her face, trying to gain sympathy. The judge wasn't moved. The verdict was announced. I was granted full legal guardianship of the 12-year-old. The younger two were placed with Dan's sister, since Dan himself was still deemed unfit for custody. Lisa was left with nothing. Outside the courthouse, she snapped. She screamed at me, calling me a traitor, blaming me for taking her kids. The 12-year-old stood beside me, silent. Then for the first time he hugged me. A quiet whisper, "Thank you." Lisa vanished after that. She deleted her social media, stopped answering family messages. I didn't care. Dan's sister kept her promise. She updated me on the younger kids. So far, they were adjusting well. They had structure, stability. And the 12-year-old, he and I started therapy together. We worked through everything. It wasn't easy, but it was worth it. I never planned to be a parent. I never planned for any of this. But in the end, I did the right thing. Something Lisa never could.